Welcome to this hour-long Yin Yoga practice to help you cool off. In the Northern Hemisphere, it's summer, and summer seems to have arrived early where I live. It goes a little back and forth, though. It gets very hot and humid. We have a heat wave, and then it cools off. And today there's a threat of rain and even thunderstorms, so I am back in my yoga room. And you will need, optionally, a couple of props for today's practice. I would suggest a couple of blocks. I'm sitting on one at the moment, and a yoga blanket or a bolster may be very useful as well. Or you can also take, if you have two mats, you can take a couple of mats, and sometimes that can work really well because there are a few poses where we'll be putting some pressure on our knee. Not a lot of poses though. And I invite you to, actually, before we close our eyes, let me give you an intention for this practice. And that is to help cool off if it is hot where you are living. It is to tap into your passions. It's also to go with the flow. This Yin Yoga practice is going to aim for the kidney meridian, and that is connecting with the element of water. And I will go into that a little further as we get deeper into our practice. For now, I invite you to close your eyes if that's comfortable for you, or close them part way. And we're going to start off with a simple breathing exercise called Chandra Vedana. And that is single nostril breathing. And I'd like you to take either your right thumb or your right index finger and have it ready. Go ahead and take a nice deep full breath. And close off your right nostril with that right index finger or that right thumb. And you're going to exhale out through your left nostril. And then inhale through your left nostril. And exhale through your left nostril. And just keep going back and forth that way, both inhaling and exhaling through your left nostril, closing off the right nostril. In Yin Yoga, we get in touch with our nadis, our energy channels. And those are very similar to traditional Chinese medicine meridians. If you've ever had any acupressure or acupuncture done, it's very, very similar. And the left nostril corresponds with Ida nadi, and that is the lunar nadi, the cooling nadi. So blocking off your right nostril and only breathing in and out through your left nostril, which I invite you to continue doing, is cooling. There are other cooling breaths, but this is the one I've chose for this practice. So let's go a few more rounds. Blocking off the right nostril, inhaling and exhaling through the left. A few more rounds there. You may be familiar with Nadi Shodhana, where you alternate blocking off the left nostril and the right nostril. And that's a very common balancing breath because it brings your right hemisphere and left hemisphere of your brain together. And then there's Sitali and Sitkari. And both of these are very cooling breaths as well. So last inhale and exhale here. Let go of your right nostril and slowly blink your eyes open. If you're sitting on a prop, come off the prop and put it over to the side. Come to a tabletop position, curl your toes under, lift those hips to the sky, And then walk your feet towards your hand and just dangle over your feet. And this is appropriately called dangling pose. Knees can be bent a lot if that feels comfortable for you. Toes should be pointing forward. Hands can be on the mat. They can be on a couple of blocks. You can grab onto your elbows. I'm going to go ahead and take them to clasp them behind my neck, the back of my head, on my hairline, and just give my neck a little extra traction. If your neck gets very tense, this can feel really nice. Head points right down at the mat. Letting all of those monkey mind thoughts, the thoughts that just go back and forth in your mind, coming out of the top of your head, pouring out onto your mat, onto the earth. Summer is a very young period of time, very active, very heating period of time. So Yin Yoga is a great counterbalance to the heating that we naturally feel in summer. And the element of summer is, for obvious reasons, fire. And fire is a great thing. Fire is passion. It can be passionate, joy, the things that get you fired up. But fire, when it gets out of hand, burns down everything in sight, right? So water, which is the element we're targeting today by concentrating on our kidney meridian, water can counterbalance fire. A couple more breaths here. Exhale. If you're holding onto the back of your head, let that go. And begin to slowly roll up. Head is the last thing to come up. My head will be briefly cut off. And then I'm going to turn to face the long end of my mat. You can stay where you are. You may want to grab a block for this next asana. And it can be on the middle height, it can be on the highest height, whatever you need, and you may not need a block at all. And take the feet angled out to either corner of your mat. And your feet can be very wide apart, and they can be closer together, whatever works for you. This tends to be a little easier when your feet are wider apart. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, bring the palms of your hands to meet in front of your heart and begin to bend your knees, squatting down, trying to keep the heels on the ground. Elbows come inside the knees. Hands really pressed together. Yogi squat. And you can use this block to sit on if this is uncomfortable for you. You can be much, much higher up if it's uncomfortable for you. It's your choice. I'm going to go ahead and redo this facing the short end of our mat. You can also roll up some small towels and place them underneath your heels if your heels come off the mat. And mine did for a very long time. But with lots of yoga practice, I've gotten much, much better at my squats. And you're trying to keep your spine as long as you can. You may find drawing in your low belly will help you to lengthen that spine. And as time goes on, you may find that you squat deeper and deeper into the squat. Last couple of breaths. Take your hands to the mat. Take your knees to the mat. Tabletop position. You may want to grab a couple blocks here and bring them to the top of the mat. And you may also want a blanket. I have 2 mats, so I don't really need the blanket, but I will go ahead and use it so you see what it looks like. Just to pad your knees and keep them safe. And from your tabletop position, inhale and step your right leg forward, low squat, dragon pose. And your knee is actually supposed to be on the mat, on the yoga blanket. And gaze is slightly down at your mat. Hands are inside the forward foot. I invite you to take your hand to that thigh of your forward leg. I'm not mirroring today, so this is my right leg and it should be your left leg. And just begin to push a little bit into it. Begin to take the right side or left side of your body toward the hand that's on the thigh, coming into a little twist, twisted dragging. If this feels like too much, a block under your left hand, the one that's on the mat, can be very helpful. And you also don't have to go into the twist, you can stay in dragon. Put a smile on your face. It gets easier when you smile. Begin to take your hand back down to the mat, so both hands are on the mat. Go ahead and begin to wiggle your front foot over towards the opposite side of the mat so that it's parallel or sort of parallel to the top edge of your mat. It's okay for your foot to come in towards your groin. That's perfectly fine. Some yoga teachers will tell you that you must have that forward leg parallel to the top of the mat. And no, most of us are not going to be comfortable that way. Most of us will twerk our knees if we try to do that. And if this is very uncomfortable, you can take that blanket behind you and just put it under your right thigh, or left thigh for me, right thigh for you. You can also grab a block and put it under your hip. And that can make it feel a whole lot easier. And if none of that works, I invite you to come onto your back and cross one leg over the bent leg, so a figure 4 while you're laying on your back. And it gets into the same muscles. But it's much kinder to our joints. But sometimes a good swan just does the body good. Notice where your shoulders are. Have they creeped up by your shoulders? Notice where your shoulders are. Have they creeped up by your ears? We don't want them there. See if you can breathe more space into that hip, into those shoulders, into that back. And maybe you want to bring your hands down to the mat and cross your hands one on top of the other and bring your forehead onto the crossed hands. And maybe you want to stay upright. Honor your body. Last breath here. Inhale, press into your hands to begin to bring yourself more upright. If you're using a block, go ahead and remove that, but keep it close by. Press your hands into the mat, curl the back toes under, and begin to lift yourself and come into down dog. Now, down dog is not a yin pose. You may have noticed this. But it's a nice counterbalance to all the opening we've been doing so far. So we're heating you up a little bit in the beginning of this practice, and then we'll be cooling off as we come towards the end. And last breath here. On your exhale, drop both knees down to your mat or your blanket, back into a tabletop position with your knees padded. And just pause. Notice how you feel. Notice if you feel a little more energized, maybe a little heated. Bringing a little of that fire element into our practice. And on your next inhale, step the left foot forward. Dragon. Hands are on the inside of the left foot. Really stretching through that back hip flexor. Chin is very slightly tucked and gaze is down. Hands can be on blocks for a little more support. Option on the next inhale to take that hand to the thigh. Press into the thigh and begin to twist towards that upper hand. So I am twisting towards my left and you are probably twisting towards your right. My left leg is the one that's bent, put on the mat, and I am twisting towards that. Last breath here. Exhale, take that hand back to the mat and begin to just move that left or right foot over towards the side. You can curl the toes of the back foot under and just straighten that leg for a minute and then bring it back down, letting the top of that foot come to the mat. And grab that block, place it under your hip for a little more support. Swan pose. If you feel like you'd like to go a little deeper, go ahead and come down to your forearms and place one hand on top of the other and bring your forehead on top of your hands. Sleeping swan. And this is an intense hip opener. And it also gets into the IT band a little bit. And if, once again, this is just too much for you, go ahead and come to your back, bend your knees, take your feet to the mat, and cross one leg over the other, the opposite that you did in our last time. So opposite side. Think a little bit here about how water can overcome fire, can tamp down those passions so they're not out of hand. Think about how water carved the Grand Canyon. Water is powerful. Fire is important, it can transform us, but too much fire gets out of hand and just burns everything inside up. And last few breaths here. And begin to press into your arms and raise your head. If you're on your back, roll over to your side, coming into a tabletop position. And if you're in swan and you have a block under your hip, go ahead and remove that. Press the mat away. If you're in that tabletop position, curl your toes under. Otherwise, curl the back toes under. Lift the hips. Down dog. If you have a blanket on your mat, you can remove that. As you're in down dog, think about the breath spiraling up from the earth into your hands, up to your shoulders, and in from the earth into your feet, up your feet. Drawing your energy from the earth. Last breath here. Inhale, drop your knees down to the mat. Bring the big toes together. You can have your knees as wide as the mat, or you can have your knees together, whatever works for you. You can grab a block if child's pose is difficult for you and sit back on the block. You can also take a blanket and put it between your thighs and your calves, and that can also make child's pose feel a little better. So bring your hips back to your heels. Invitation to grab a block and place your forehead on the block. And we're going to be here for a little while to really let that effort go as we move into more cooling postures. And very slowly, if you'd like, go ahead and bring your head to one side and then the other, giving your forehead a little massage, shaking your head no, very slowly. And coming to stillness at the center, maybe a little up and a little down, a little yes and no, and then come to stillness. You always have the option to not use a block and have your head on the mat if that's comfortable to you. Maybe visualizing the ocean here or a large lake with waves, the fluidity of moving water, and going with the flow. Maybe you notice your breath as you give up those more energizing, challenging poses. If they feel energizing and challenging to you, maybe they don't. And notice as we pause here in child's pose, what's going on with your breath? Is it becoming steadier? Is it beginning to slow down? And once you've noticed your breath, take your attention to your thoughts and notice what's going on with them.
Maybe these long holds make you anxious. Maybe your breathing actually speeds up. Maybe your thoughts speed up. Maybe you start thinking things like, when is she ever going to let us out of this hold? And see if you can just let that go. Let those thoughts float away like the clouds in the sky. And bring a little calm into your day, into your practice. The longer we hold these poses, the deeper we get into our connective tissue, and the stronger they eventually become. Everybody always says they want flexibility from yoga, but generally what they really mean is they want mobility, they want ease of motion. These long holds will help you get there if you practice them. A couple more breaths here. Inhale, begin to push into your hands as you walk them back towards your body. Slowly rolling your spine up, taking your legs out to the side, and I will turn to face the camera for a moment so you can see what I'm doing. Taking the soles of your feet together and taking them as close to your groin as you can. That will help again activate that kidney meridian, the water element. And turn back to the side. If that's very uncomfortable for you, you can take a block and sit on it. And that just helps raise our hips, and that can make that a little more accessible for a lot of us. You also have the option to put blocks underneath your knees if this is very uncomfortable for your knees as well. Go ahead and start out with a straight spine. Maybe you'd like to close your eyes. And we're going to be in this pose for about 5 minutes. And once you've spent a few moments with that straight spine, begin to let your head be really, really heavy. It's okay to let your back round. Just let that head point down towards the mat. We're not forcing those knees open. We're never forcing in Yin Yoga. We're coming to your edge where you feel some sensation, but no pain. Shoulders get really, really heavy. Head is heavy. Maybe the chin dips towards your chest. As Travis Elliott likes to say, the deeper you go, the deeper you heal, but we're letting time and gravity take us to that deep point. We're not forcing it. I can tell you for sure that after practicing in yoga, not daily, but frequently for the last year and a half, I have noticed more mobility, more ease of movement. It used to be when I did a deep yogi squat, my heels came right up off the mat. And now I can get down, and most of the time I can keep my heels on the mat, not always. When I did do bridge pose, and they used to say, grab your ankles, if you're familiar with bridge pose. And I was always like, yeah, no, that's not happening. And now I find the first time I do it, it's probably still not happening. But after I've been in one or two, I find I can do that. Notice what you're doing with your head. Maybe you're holding a little tension there. Let that go. So with time, with practice, with consistency, you'll get the results you're looking for. But it doesn't come immediately. That's why yoga is called a practice. Last inhale here. Take your hands to the mat. Begin to walk your hands back towards your body. Take them under your knees and begin to bring your knees back together. If you're sitting on a block, go ahead and remove that. And you probably won't need a block again. But you always have the option to use them under your knees in Savasana, and that can feel very nice. You can go ahead and swing your legs out to the side. Come up to a tabletop position. Begin to walk your hands down to the mat. Legs come straight out behind you. Arms are about shoulder width apart. And take your legs up, bend those knees, and then just let them windshield wiper to one side and to the other. Release that low back and the hips. Butterfly is a pretty intense hip opener, in case you didn't notice. Okay. Coming into Sphinx pose. Belly is just slightly engaged to protect your low back. Gaze is at a point in front of you, trying to keep your neck in line with the spine. Opening across those shoulders, relaxing those shoulders. Letting the glutes and the hips soften. If this feels like too much for you, you can always grab those blocks and put your forearms on blocks. Or if you have a bolster, you can put the bolster underneath your forearm. If you'd like to go a little deeper, begin to press into your hands and straighten your arms out without locking your elbows. Maybe bring those hands just a little bit forward. So pushing the upper body up, making sure you check in with your low back to see how this feels. Softening those shoulders. Seal pose. And yes, you will feel a little effort in your arms here. And that's okay. The main reason we don't contract our muscles in Yin Yoga is because we're not trying to get into the muscles. We're not trying to stretch the muscles. We're trying to not stretch, but strengthen our connective tissue. And when we contract our muscles, they heat up, and you run the risk of overstretching, going too deeply into a pose, because it's easier when your muscles are warm. Walk your hands back towards your body, pulling the abs in as you come up to a tabletop position. Walking your knees forward, taking your legs out to the side. Bringing the soles of your feet to your mat. And slowly coming down to your back, first to your elbows, and all the way down to your back. Inhale, bring one knee into your chest, more towards the shoulder, and reach down, grab the foot if you can. If you can't, grab an ankle, grab a shin, wherever you can reach. Take the second leg in towards that shoulder, and reach for the outside of that foot if that is available to you. Happy baby. Put a smile on your face. If you'd like to rock a little bit from side to side, go ahead and do that. One of the other principles of Yin Yoga is stillness. But a little bit of movement is always okay. If this seems like too much for you, let go of one leg, bring that foot to the mat with the knee bent, and just hold on to one leg. Imagine you can feel gravity actually pushing your body down into your mat, into the earth. Really relax into your mat.
If you've taken half happy baby, go ahead and switch your legs. Last couple breaths. And last breath. Go ahead and release those feet. Bend your knees and bring the feet down all the way to your mat. Knees point towards the sky or the ceiling. Inhale your hips up and over to the right. Bend those knees into your chest and let them fall over towards the left. Once again, I'm not mirroring you, so your knees are probably falling over to the right. Your left arm is reaching out. Take a few minutes here, noticing, do you feel any different from when you started this practice? What that difference is, there's no right or wrong answer. And you could do this practice one day and you might find there's one answer, and you could do the practice a couple days later and you might find something else feels different, which is completely normal. Notice anywhere you're feeling tension. See if you can breathe into that area. Let it soften, let go. If your stomach is grumbling like mine, that's a good thing. That's what we want, actually, unless you're really, really hungry. But when our stomachs start to grumble, it's a signal that we're moving from our sympathetic nervous system, our fight, flight, or freeze, into our parasympathetic nervous system, our rest and digest. And that is exactly what we're looking to happen in Yin Yoga. As I said at the beginning of this practice, summer is a very young time. It's very active, it's fire, it's passion. And like increases like, so if you're always doing yang practices, vinyasa yoga, hot yoga, ashtanga yoga,
you're going to get imbalanced most likely. You need that little bit of yin in there. A little bit of cooling, a little bit of let it go. Letting the body relax. Last few breaths here. Last breath. Inhale, begin to take your knees up towards the ceiling. Press into your feet. Take your hips over towards the right. Now I am mirroring you. Take your knees into your chest and let them drop over towards the left. Option to have your right arm straight. I can't because I have the wall behind me. And your head can look wherever feels comfortable for you. That could be straight up at the ceiling, and that could be over your right shoulder. And last couple of breaths here. Last breath. And begin to bring your knees back up to point towards the ceiling. Soles of the feet come to the mat. And bring your knees out to either edge of your mat. Let them drop over to one side. And inhale through center. Drop over the other side, windshield wipers. Just go back and forth a couple of times. Just releasing any tension you may have built up in that low back and those hips. We're moving into Savasana, our final resting pose. And if you have that bolster or a couple of blocks, those can feel really nice under your knees. Come to stillness. Stretch one foot along the mat and the other. Let the feet fall open. Hands can be palms down for grounding. They can be palms up for receptivity. Close your eyes if that's comfortable for you. Have them partially closed if that's more comfortable. Just take a moment to make any adjustments you need in Savasana to be comfortable. Maybe take your attention to your subtle body. Perhaps you feel a little tingling along your limbs. And that is the subtle energy that we've moved during this practice. Just moving your prana, your life force along your body. And perhaps you do not feel that, and that is normal too. There's no right or wrong. And as you give yourself this time to relax and take in this practice in Savasana, I invite you to maybe think about what makes you passionate, what fires you up, and perhaps what fires you need to put out by being a bit more fluid, going a bit more with the flow. And just relax here until you hear my voice again.
And begin to bring your awareness back into your body. Slowly deepening your breath. And begin to wiggle your fingers and your toes. Slowly begin to circle your wrists and your ankles in one direction. And then the other. Inhale and bring your arms up over your head into a deep stretch, stretching those feet away from those hands. Big full body stretch. Exhale, draw one knee into your chest, and then the other. Slowly roll onto whichever side feels most comfortable for you. Bottom arm comes along the mat to cradle your head. Pause here, take a few breaths. No reason to rush through transitioning between this practice and the rest of your day. And slowly take your palms to the mat, fairly slowly pushing yourself up into an upright position, an easy seated position for you, maybe grabbing a block and sitting on top of that block or a blanket. Eyes are still closed if they were closed or partially closed. Inhale, take the palms of the hands together at your heart center and begin to rub them back and forth. And then coming to stillness at your heart center, slightly bowing your head, thanking yourself for giving you the gift of this yoga practice. As I thank you for joining me today in my practice. Slowly blinking your eyes open to take in your mat, the floor, and slowly raising your head, taking in the rest of the room, putting a smile on your face. I hope you enjoyed this cooling Yin Yoga practice. I hope that it finds you feeling much calmer than when you started, relaxed, rejuvenated, and maybe you've thought a little bit about the things that you're passionate about and the other fires that you need to put out in your life. And remember, every day, go inside, find that peace, that calm that is always inside of you.